Hello, this is Nancy Heins-Glaser for Meet the Artist on SOMAtv, and today I have the great opportunity of introducing somebody who is also a producer and host on this show, Dustin, Dumas Weeks, and we're here to talk about your book and your art and all the many things that you've done in your life. Anyway, thank you so much for deciding to join us
Thank you so much for
on my
inviting me.
show. And what's been fun is just discovering your history, and I knew nothing about it. You're always here helping out, working, doing shows, and to discover you're a published author, you're a visual artist, you're a Renaissance woman, actually. But more
Thank you.
interesting, and even going back, is your financial background, which really throws in a whole other left curve. So that's what we're here to talk about today is lessons from a recovering worker bee by you.
Yes.
So tell us, first of all, how that came to be and a little bit about your background and how you've evolved to do all these other things.
Okay, so a little bit about how I came to write the book. The book actually wasn't supposed to be a book initially. It started because I was living in Silicon Valley right during the time that everything burst, the big .com, bust.
The boom or the bust?
I was there for both.
Okay.
But the book was part of the bust part of it. And the reason I started even writing anything was because I had been laid off. I worked for a startup like everybody else in the Valley. And I had been laid off when the company just basically went out of business. So after that, I found another position, and that company also didn't do very well, and so I was laid off there. And this happened very quickly, this meaning that I was laid off twice within a year. And at that point, it really made me think about what was important to me. And while I was in both of those positions, I literally worked quite a few hours. I mean, like 80 hours.
Yeah, 80-hour weeks. Nothing unusual in that industry, for sure.
Exactly. So I had to take a breath, and I was actually writing a list. I actually had a list that said, this is the type of working environment I'd like to work in the future. These are the type of people I'd like to work with, And so then all of a sudden it just evolved into, I thought, well, maybe it'll be a pamphlet, and then the next thing I know, it's a book. So that's how that started. But my background in finance started even before I came to the Valley. I used to work in Europe as a currency trader in Frankfurt, and then in Copenhagen I also worked in investment banking. So those hours were very crazy, and my rationale was thinking, well, I should come home, meaning back to the U.S. and work, and I thought I'd have a little bit more work-life balance. And it really didn't exist for people like me. So that's when I had to take a step back and look at things in a different way.
And so this lessons is almost a confession,
Exactly.
right? Really, because you're kind of laying it out on the line of making choices about a life,
Absolutely.
what a life means.
Absolutely.
You're still quite young, but you learned that quickly. Many of us get too old before we figured it out, but. And your mission, I think you said, was to teach others.
That's exactly right. I remember very, very distinctly. I was in Copenhagen, and I was working in investment banking. So you have these what they call pitch books and different things that you have to do in order to help the client sell their company, merge, or whatever. I remember being in the office at 3 o'clock in the morning. And I was just about to leave, and I remember and by the way, everyone in Denmark bikes because to have a car is like 70%. So I was on my bike, biking home, and I was thinking, wow, this is crazy. I have to be back in the office at 7. Like, no excuses. It doesn't matter, if it doesn't.
How late?
Exactly.
Too bad.
Exactly.
What sleep?
Exactly.
Right.
And that's when I just sort of had this epiphany. I'm like, this isn't really how I want my life to be led in the long term. It was okay for that period of time because I decided to shorten it, but I couldn't see myself doing that for a long time. So that's when I decided to come back to the States. But as I told you, I ended up working all those hours again, and that's how the book came
Well,
out.
and when I was reading your bio, working on the Chicago Board of Trade, That is really another experience. Did you
Yes.
include some of that in the book, or
Yes, I
did they have to
did.
wait for the next one? You have another one coming out.
Yes, I
too,
do.
so,
I
but,
do have another one coming.
And that was an experience all on its own.
That was experience would be an understatement, because I worked in 2 rooms. So in the Chicago Board of Trade, you have the grain room where people sell the soybeans and the corn and things like that, I started there, and I thought, this is really crazy. And just to give you an idea of what it is, it's when you see on the news, people are screaming and shouting.
Right.
Yes. So
That's on the floor.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly. And then after that, I went and worked on the bond floor, which was, I can't even tell you, there was something new every day. Rumors would make the market fluctuate. You would have people physically fighting in the pits. So it was coming out of school, I was not ready for that. But you soon either sink or swim. So yes, it was quite a different experience.
And you graduated from University
of Illinois undergrad, and then I have an MBA from the University of Texas at Austin.
At Champaign-Urbana.
Yes,
Where
Champaign-Urbana.
my cousin was a director of econ for the college for many years, and I always say, so much for genetics. I can't balance my checkbook. But it is a good school, and I know that their training in the economics area is pretty sound.
Yes.
Have you found, well, I don't want to diverge too far from your book, but have you found being out east now, because you started sort of in that Midwest thing, you grew
Yes.
up in Aurora, Illinois.
Yep.
You went out west, you went to Europe, you're back here out east.
Yes.
Have you found it different since you've been all around at this point? Have you found the area different?
I do. From a professional standpoint, I find that the East Coast is very regimented as far as, if you're in finance, that's where you belong. You can't, it's a little bit more difficult, or challenging, I should say, in order to go into different areas. When I was in Silicon Valley, it's pretty much wherever you can perform and do well, that's where they will accept you. For example, if you don't have a history in finance, maybe tangentially, that's fine. But if you prove yourself, then you're considered a finance person. Of course, the degrees do matter and things like that, but it's a little less rigid.
Right, okay. So, yeah, it is a little bit looser out west. It's just a little more mellow.
Yes.
Still a lot of traffic, maybe not as many horns.
This is
I
true.
think that would be different. So the traffic may be the same, you just don't have as much anger behind the wheel, or much intensity. Now, when you wrote this book, when did you complete it, or how long did it take? I should say.
Oh wow. Okay, so I decided to self-publish only because I thought I could get it done faster than a publisher could. You know how they always say when you start a project, it's always longer than you expect it to be? That's exactly what was the case. That was the case in this book. So the book probably took, I remember a year and a half being what would take a publisher, and I knew it took me like closer to 2 years to actually complete the book and have it edited and things like that.
And really, one of my earliest guests, well, actually probably from 2003, is a woman named Maxine Giannini, and she began with her husband's artwork from World War II, the only discovered original work from foxholes. She discovered it after his death, and it's taken her 14 years to find the right publisher.
Wow.
14 years. So she began her search before I interviewed her, and I'm going to have her on. But the process of writing, I understand, is almost painful. I've read and watched famous authors say, oh my God, the voices stop. I want it to stop, and it's not done until the voices stop. Did this happen to you when you did this? Or
when I wrote this book, it was a list, and then it just sort of grew. But after I decided it would be a book, I was very regimented. I got up every day. I had to write a certain, for a certain period, not a certain number of words or pages, but I definitely said, okay, in order for me to finish this, I have to write every single day, which is what I did. So it wasn't so hard because, one, my book is nonfiction. So I had my experiences to actually, use.
Draw,
yes,
sure.
and so I didn't have to think of anything as far as like nonfiction type things.
And you apparently have 26 rules to follow.
I
Is
do.
that true?
26 lessons that will help you find somewhat of a work-life balance, as well as help you accelerate in your career.
Well, and so here I am, lucky enough to have you on because of your visual arts. And you could be on Jim Horton's Books and Action show, and you could be on Heather Swift's Career Corner. Maybe I'll have to be on all three.
That sounds good
but,
to me.
What I was interested in is that the balance and the well-rounding, the pursuit you had to make sure your life was in balance. And I think when we're probably going to go out for a break in a second, but I want to talk about how you've done that.
Absolutely.
And something else has been added to your life. You have a child,
Yes.
so life is enriched in other ways. It's so much to pack into a day.
Yes.
So think about it when we get ready to go to break.
Okay.
Tell us how you did that, and if there's a mantra you say that we could all follow.
All right.
I'd like to be able to do it. And don't turn that dial. Stay tuned for Dustin Dumas Weeks telling us more about lessons from a recovering worker bee and telling us all about how she made balance happen in her life. So don't turn that dial.
Television is a powerful and influential medium that allows different groups the opportunity to produce programming that directly affects their own communities. Public, educational, and government access channels ensure that all people, regardless of race, age, gender, disability, religion, or economic status, have access to local government information and the use of a public communication forum. Make sure everyone has a voice. Support your local PEG channels.
And welcome back. Nancy Heins-Glaser with Dustin Dumas Weeks. Writer, artist, great person, TV producer, host. And right now we're going to talk about how you established this life-work balance.
Okay.
And wrote a book, had a kid, moved from Europe to California or California to Europe and out east, all in 30 seconds or less. No, but what I do want you to tell me how you made the decision you wanted balance in your life.
Right.
That was the first step. So you were getting ready to make the change.
Yes.
What did you do to get set? Because I know as actors say, it's getting ready, getting set, and go. So the two steps come before go. A lot of young people, what they do in their experience is develop skill at the first two steps. When you start out as a young person, you don't know. You just know go.
Right.
So you got ready. You made a decision
Yep.
to change.
Absolutely.
Then how did you get set
Okay.
to actually implement the change?
So what I do with anything that I want to accomplish is I am very, very strict about making goals. I don't care if it is a goal about how many minutes I write, if I'm writing a book, if it's, the painting. I have very, very strict goals because you were asking me a little bit earlier, you mentioned earlier about different mantras. My mantra is that you can think about what you'd like to do all day long, all week long, all month long, but until you have a solid goal as to this is how I'm going to get from point A to point B, it's just an idea, it's just a vision. There's nothing wrong with that, but it will continue to be until you have goals. So to answer your question, I had very clear and defined goals. So I didn't say after I got to the point where my book, my words were actually going to be a book, then I set about finding out, how do I turn this into a book? For example, I needed to get an ISBN number, which is basically the little...
Right.
The
Your
little,
barcode?
Yes, the barcode
Yeah,
on the
don't
back.
you wish you had stock in that company?
Exactly.
Yeah, right.
So exactly.
Before that,
I had to have very, very clearly defined goals. For anything I do, that's what I do.
That's who you are. Okay, and so then the goal, though, have balance also meant letting go of some of that rigidity, didn't it?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So, for example, I would actually turn down classes and social events because it's a little crazy. I know, Nancy, but I knew that I had to work on Saturday and Sunday all day. Not even like, I'll go in and work for a few hours, but I was working the entire day, and maybe I'd get off at 5 or 6. And this is when you talk about letting go, that's what I had to let go of. So then I scheduled to make sure that I would not be tempted to go to work on a weekend. I took tennis lessons on Saturday. I took painting lessons, at this time. I went to the gym. I had things that I scheduled in my calendar so that I was forced to do it.
And forced leisure.
Exactly.
You made yourself try to have a good time.
Exactly.
For the balance, right?
Yeah, and I shouldn't make it sound like I forced myself to go in and paint or to go and play tennis. But I knew that if somebody was meeting me there, I would have been less likely to say, you know what, I'll just stay at work for another 30 minutes, which meant another 3 hours. So that way somebody else was also depending on me.
So, and really, of your 26, and on the back, you have a bunch of people quoting you, kind of pretty famous people, saying this is a great book. Barbara Corcoran, the founder of the Corcoran Group. I mean, most people know who that is. Robert Johnson, founder of Black Entertainment Television. These are people who people know. So how did you get them to read it? First of all, how did you get this in their hand?
Okay.
That is interesting.
You know what? That is probably, I think when we just talked about goals, I had a goal. Since my book was self-published, a lot of people think, well, if it's self-published, that means that a publisher didn't want your book.
Yeah, it must be,
it must not be good.
She felt like writing.
And as
right.
I told you, I'm sort of impatient, and I thought, well, I did research once I decided it would be a book, and I saw on this hand, it said publishing would take at minimum a year and a half, and then after that, if you're not well known, then you're just going to be put with all the other unknowns, and they of course put all their publicity toward the larger names. And I thought about it, and this is during the age of the internet when I could put up my own web page, those kinds of things. And I thought, well, I can do it in less time. Again, hindsight is 2020.
Right,
it took a little longer, but I knew that by self-publishing, I wanted people, well-known people, to actually read the book and say, it's a good book, or that they would recommend it to others. So all I did, Nancy, was I had this goal where I wanted a specific caliber of people to talk about the book. So I actually sent it to them. That's all I did. I sent it to quite a few people, and Robert Johnson sent back saying fine. He wrote what he wanted to. The same with Barbara Corcoran. The same with Jay Levinson from Gorilla, the
Gorilla
grandfather
marketing series,
yes, and other people. So I think a lot of people would probably think like, well, I'm not going to send anything
That's
to Barbara.
pretty gutsy.
Exactly.
Yeah, well, but you see, you understood that has power. I think maybe working on the floor and doing the trading and all that might have changed your timidity level, wouldn't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I guess when I think about it, all they could say is no or not respond, and that would have been okay, but at least I had tried. And if I hadn't tried, I wouldn't have had people of a certain caliber say, hey, we like the book, you guys might like it too. And so again, all I did was, I had the goal. I wanted, because my book was self-published, I wanted to make sure that I had reputable people, backing it in a sense, and not financially.
Looking at it.
And by the way, I didn't know these people. I didn't know Robert Johnson. He went to Illinois as well. I didn't know Barbara Corcoran. I didn't know a lot of these people, and actually, I didn't want people I knew because I didn't want it to be
self-serving.
Exactly. I didn't want the back of the book to have everyone with my DNA.
Yeah.
Saying like my cousins, my brother, stuff like that. So. I did want to have people who weren't in my circle.
Well, and I give you a lot of credit for not holding yourself back on that. For some reason, I don't think you hold yourself back when it comes to a good goal and something you've set your mind to. Now, I'm looking here. There's 5 on the back. Maintain lessons of the 26. There are 5. Maintain your integrity. Go where you are wanted. Life is not fair, so get over it. Do not make excuses and work intelligently in every job. Is there any one of those 5 that really rings the truest of all to you?
Life is not fair, so get over it. I mean, that is just, regardless of who you are, that rings true. And there's always going to be something or someone that you feel is like not treating you fairly. Just keep going. Don't let those people or that organization or whatever it is hold you back. Just keep going forward.
Especially if you're passionate about what you're doing. That's the hard part, is to continue working hard in the same mindset if it's not something about which you are passionate.
Right.
So when you made the decision to sort of leave the financial world, did you lose the passion for it, or did you just say it's too hard or it's too busy, or what made you make the move?
Well, I didn't leave it 100%. So
Okay.
now I've just transitioned into, I love technology. I absolutely love it. So I've transitioned finance into that arena. So a lot of people who would traditionally use finance in this regard, I've transitioned into using it into into more social or social technology regards. So I didn't lose it. I love it. I still love it.
Okay, but you still have to drive people there. That's
Yes.
the piece that
Yes.
just because you have more access, there's 50 million times more pieces of information for people to select from,
Right.
and only a certain number of hours in a day.
Yes.
That's the part that I feel that maybe we've lost a little.
Yeah.
We've lost a little in the in the quantity. We've
Right.
lost some quality along the way, but that doesn't mean it's not right. It's just
No.
my experience. Now, there's also, in this, it says, have a balanced life. What is the lesson?
Okay.
So your lesson was you needed to find that balance,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you set about on a way to do it. Now,
Mhm.
I think surrounded by your artwork here, that might be one of the things you chose
That
to
was
create
definitely
in
one of the
balance.
things.
Is that correct?
You're absolutely correct. What I did was I've always wanted to paint. I've always been very creative, but being in finance, you're sort of limited in your creativity, unless you're doing spreadsheets or pitch books or doing deals and things like that. And so I wanted to use the other side of my brain. And so as we were talking about a little bit earlier about scheduling fun activities, and this was one of the fun activities. So I initially just started painting because I just love to paint. And so I have a lot of abstract art. And then I decided that it would be fun just to learn a little bit more about art, like the formal side of art, mixing colors and things like that. So I chose to do oils on canvas, and that's what you see around. Some of these are part of the class I took.
Okay. And where did you take class? Was that here? Or
No,
elsewhere?
these are paintings I took the class in California.
California. Okay. And there are a couple of things in here, but the one I really happen to love is maintain your integrity, and that's
Yes.
not always easy. And
Yeah.
from the financial arena or any arena, maintaining your integrity is key. And I still think it matters, don't you?
Absolutely, absolutely. Because at the end of
Yeah, go right ahead. I mean, say it more, but
at the end of the day, you're the person who has to look in the mirror. And I know that sounds very cliche-ish, but even if you're not thinking about it today, in 5 years or a year, I just find it very important because it's not only reflective of the type of person you are, but it's also reflective of how you deal with other people and things like that. So I think it's very important in every aspect of your life, but especially, as you mentioned, in finance. Of course, it's important in every single industry, but in finance, and especially during this particular time in the world, it's so important to have integrity because that's your reputation. That's the only thing at the end of the day that people can really rely on. So they can either say, she's known to be an honest person or dishonest, and I'd rather be the person who's known to have integrity and be honest.
well, and that's a rock value. Sometimes people forget it, and I don't think it goes out of style.
No,
But what I also thought was interesting is you have checklists at the end of
Yes.
chapters, and sort not a review as much as what is it you're going to take. What are the kernels? 5 pieces, 4 pieces of information from this chapter or
Right.
section. Your ability to distill the points was what impressed me the most. Did you learn that in, being able to, I don't know, just be finite with things, with figures and numbers? How did you zero in on those points?
I think because of, you mentioned my time on the Chicago Board of Trade. You have to make decisions very quickly, and they should be the right ones, especially if you have somebody else on the other end of a deal. But the most important thing that I took away from that is you don't have a lot of time to explain. For example, if you're going into the pit and there's an error, you have to be very quick, decisive, and be able to tell that trader or whoever it is, the phone clerk or whoever it is, this is the problem. And so that's what I wanted to bring in my book. I wanted to bring, if you read this chapter or if you read this section, this is what you should have taken away from
Well,
it.
and I liked it being at the end, because I think sometimes if it's at the beginning, you forget by the time you get to the end, and the end is really, and you've taken your experiences here. We have a minute left, I can't believe it, but you've taken your experiences here, bad experiences, and shared some of them so that people can avoid them. And so how are we going to hear more about you? You've got a book signing coming up. When is that?
I do. I have a book signing coming up on May 3rd at the, May 3rd at the Hilton Branch Maplewood Library, and that's from 6 to 7.
I love that little place, and I'm glad they kept it open, because that was iffy at one point, I think, whether they were keeping it up.
Yes.
But is there anything you want to impart to the young people or old people out there? You have about 30 seconds.
Well, one thing that I would actually advise young people who are not so young, is that to take the risk and take the chance. Just like, I took the chance to send Barbara Corcoran and Robert Johnson my book. It doesn't matter if it's that. When I went to Europe, that was a really big chance for me. I actually turned down every job I had received from business school, because that was part of one of my goals. I wanted to work in Europe. So I went there and did that. So take a risk and make sure you have goals.
Well, and I want to thank you so much, because we're here with all of your beautiful work. We've been sharing and talking, and it's time to go. But we want to make sure everybody watches Dustin's Kaleidoscope on SOMAtv. Don't forget that. We have a Kaleidoscope in her honor. And we want to thank you so much for joining our family at SOMAtv, joining the audience there. And thank you for joining us and watching Meet the Artist. And keep a lookout for this lady. Her future's so bright, she's got to wear shades. Thank you very much, Dustin. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.